I'm going to tell you 5 things you need to know when you're using class components in your NativeScript Vue applications. Coming up. What's going on? This is Alex from nativescripting.com. If you want to learn more about NativeScript, click on the subscribe button and the bell so you don't miss anything. The Vue community is embracing TypeScript in a big way, especially with version 3 coming out later this year. And you need to know this stuff. In this video, I'll be creating a class component that's based on a standard Vue component that's just an object notation component. In order to use class components, you're going to need to know how to use props, data, methods, computeds, watches. Did I get everything? I think so. So that's what we're doing here today. We'll look at the conversion and we'll look at the syntax differences between the two methods. And stay till the end to get a prize. Let's check it out. All right, here's my demo app. This is the root app Vue component. All this does is import the person component and displays it. And this is what it looks like. Let's take a look at the person component. Here we have a form, just an input field for the first name, and a display label for the last name. We're passing in what to say from the root app Vue component into the person component, and that becomes a prop. The setup of this code should look pretty familiar to those doing Vue, whether you're using TypeScript or not. Here we have props, which is an object. Then we define the name of the prop, what to say. This is being passed in from the parent. Then we have our data here with a counter and the first name property, which is the initial first name property. And then we have a computed with a full name, methods, and a watch property. So we're going to convert all these to a person class component. Let's take a look at how this works first. So here's a text field, and when I change the first name, the full name, because it's a computed property, it gets updated automatically right here, and the counter counts how many changes I've made. And that works because we're watching the first name property, and every time the first name property changes, we update the last name by concatenating the initial last name, which is Smith, with an updated counter value. When I tap on speak, a message pops up saying, this is John Smith 11. I am a good person. And that's the prop that was passed in right here from the parent. So that's the setup. And this is what it looks like. Let's see how we can do this with a class component. And you'll see the difference in the syntax. All right. So right next to the person component, I'm going to create a person class component .vue. All right, so this is a single file component .vue file. I'm just going to go ahead and copy all this from the person component and put it right here in the person class component. I'm not even going to touch the template at all. That's going to be exactly the same. So now here in the code, by the way, this lang attribute says TS, which means TypeScript. Right here in the code, I'm going to export default class person component, and I'm going to extend Vue. All right, so now we need to import Vue. And that's coming from this package I installed called Vue Property Decorator. So in my previous video on setting up Vue class components, you saw me install these, the Vue class component and the Vue Property Decorator library. All right, Vue is coming from there. We also need to label this component with a decorator called component. That's also coming from Vue Property Decorator. Let's import that. So what's going to be the difference? I'm going to go ahead and rip out all this stuff on the inside of this class because we're going to rewrite it, and you'll see the syntax differences as we go. Oh, this should be called person class component. Let's go ahead and use this component in the root component. So I'm going to do an import here, and the import is going to be exactly the same as the person component, except it's coming from the person class component Vue file. And I'm going to add that to our components list here in the root component. And right here under the line, I'm just going to copy this up here and paste it here. So this is going to be our class component. And the message we're going to pass in is, I am a classy person. Great. So I'm going to save that app Vue component and close it out. Now, let's talk about the 5 points that we need to take care of here. Point number 1 is props. So this property that we're passing in from app Vue, we need to somehow accept it as an input here. So we need to call it the same as we did in our person component, and it's called what to say. So all we're going to do is just define a class property called what to say, and it's going to be a string. But in order to have this be defined as a prop that's being passed down as an input, we need to use the prop decorator, and that's coming from Vue Property Decorator as well. All right, I'm going to save this and let's take a look. Oh, it looks like we're duplicating our component here. So let's go to app Vue again. this is supposed to be person class component down here. All right. Notice we have the class component here with the fields. If I say speak, nothing's going to work right now because we don't have the other properties or methods here. We'll get to that. All right. The next thing we need to define is data. Data is important, right? So this is point number 2. How do we define that in a regular Vue component? Well, we have this weird syntax. I never liked the syntax personally. It says data and is a function, and the function returns properties, and somehow we're supposed to refer to these in our components and remember what they are. For example, this first name property. Here is a TypeScript file, right? And I have to remember what they're called because this doesn't have any IntelliSense on it. And that kind of defeats some of the point of having TypeScript, doesn't it? We want to be able to reference our methods and properties just by saying this dot. And we can't do that when it's wrapped in a function like that. So how do we define this in a class? Well, that's really simple. All we need to do is just define a class property called first name. I'm going to set it to Donna. I'm also going to create an initial last name property. Let's say Summer. All right. What else do we have here? So in the data, we have the initial last name. We have a counter, first name, and a last name. So let's create a counter property and set it to 1. And let's create a last name property here. And I can set it to Summer as well. Now, because this is a class, I can refer to other properties from inside the class. So I can say this dot initial last name. You can see I have code completion, and this will actually work. I'm just going to need to move this down under the initial last name, but this will work. Whereas in the Vue component, I couldn't just say this dot initial last name. That's not going to work. You need to redefine that last name. So that's our data. These are just properties. Very simple. So when we type into this field here, we also have a counter that changes and keeps track of how many changes we've done. And we do that thanks to a watch property. Watch is number 3 on our list. So let's take a look at that. This is how awkward it is to define a watch property right now in plain Vue. We have to define watch, and then it's an object. And inside that, we have to match up the name that we want to watch. And then that's an object where we have a handler. And the handler is what gets executed whenever first name changes. That's pretty awkward. How would we do it in a class component? Well, how about just a function called onFirstNameChanged, which will receive a value, the new value of the string. We're not going to be using that though, so I'm just going to leave it out because our onFirstNameChange handler is going to use this.lastName. Notice my IntelliSense is working. And we're going to set that to this.initialLastName plus the counter, and we're going to increment the counter. Now, in order to make this watchable, all we got to do is just add a decorator that says watch and the property we want to watch, which is first name. We're going to import watch from that Vue property decorator package. Compare this syntax to this syntax. Big difference, right? I like this one better. That's just personal opinion. So that's watch. Next on the list, number 4, computed. How do we normally do computed? Well, again, we have a property and we define an object, and then we have a method in there called full name. It's just pretty awkward. Well, guess what? In a class component, doing a computed is really simple. All we need to do is just define a getter called full name. And this getter is going to return what we need. That's it. So let's put in this dot first name. And notice we get full IntelliSense again because we're in a class. And then this dot last name. How simple is that? Finally, one more thing we need to do. Number 5 on the list, and that's methods. Okay, well, methods, that can't be hard, can it? On a class component? All we need to do is just add a method here. I think so. So we need one called speak, and we're going to do alert. So we're going to say here, this is plus this dot full name. We get full IntelliSense here. So this is blank speaking, or Donna Summer speaking. And then we're just going to concatenate this with that message that we passed in, which is what to say. That's the property that we passed in. So a method is actually a method, and this works. Let's take a look. Let's see. Here we have Donna Summer. Let's say I change that to Donatella Summer. You can see that our full name is a computed field, and that gets updated. You can see that we have a number 5 here, which means we've updated first name 5 times. And yeah, we typed in 5 more characters. If I delete the A, we updated it 6 times. If I add the A, we've updated it 7 times. And if I tap speak, this is Donatella Summer 7 speaking. I am a classy person. Yes, so this is a method and that's how it works. And how did we used to define methods? Okay, another property, and inside of that is a function. So I prefer the class component syntax. I think that in version 3 of Vue, this is going to get a lot simpler, where we're not going to have to define the decorators. We'll see how they implement that in version 3. But for now, we have version 2.5 and 2.6. So it's very clean. I really like the class component approach. And for those of you that are coming from Angular, are really going to enjoy this as well, I think. All right, there you go. Now I know that class components aren't for everybody, and some people love using pure JavaScript, and that's totally fine too. This is just another way to do it. And if you are using TypeScript in your NativeScript Vue apps, then class components are a really good fit for you. I would even go so far as to say that it doesn't make much sense for you to not use class components if you are using TypeScript. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you like class components, or do you prefer the standard object notation for Vue? Leave a comment down below, and I will select one of the comments. That person is going to win a NativeScript Vue introductory course on nativescripting.com. Also, send me your questions. I'm @Digitalix on Twitter, and I will see you next time.